Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. I was sleeping the other day and something started crawling on my face and I swatted at it. Got a face full of stinky bugness. So we're going to be talking about some of those insects that are wanting to be coming to our house, especially those darn stink bugs that are really liking my house this year. But you know I'm not doing this by myself. I'm joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Hey, Ken.
Hello, Chris. No, I haven't seen too many stink bugs in our house yet, but we're in the middle of town, so don't usually have as many as some people do.
Yeah. Well, we are on the margin of town. We are actually, the county line is in our backyard. So we have woods, we have fields, we have neighbors, we have all kinds of fun things that might draw in some insects. You should come over and visit, Ken. I think you'd really have a good time.
May have to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, congratulations on the rainfall. Did you get any rain? Is it raining right now in Jacksonville?
It's not raining right now. It was at 2:30, but it was this morning when I got up and when we went to school. I looked at the weather app. I think we got about half an inch of rain, although it seems like it was more than that. Because looking at the fairgrounds here, there's water, standing water in some of the ditches. So I'm not sure exactly how much we got, but weather app says about half an inch.
Well, I think maybe we got about 1/10 of an inch according to the old rain gauge, but I think we got a little bit more than that too in our backyard. So, or maybe it's just been so long. I don't know what it means to have like rainfall. Any little bit seems like a lot now. But yeah, I did water. I went out and I watered part of my lawn for the last few days because we have a pin oak, and we have this as part of our lawn that we use quite a bit even in the winter. And I know that if I don't keep some of this grass alive, it's just going to become a mud pit. And I want to give my pin oak some water. It's near the house. And while I would never have planted this tree this close to the house, I don't want to have to cut it down. So I'm going to I'm going to take care of this tree. And pin oaks, sometimes they need some water. So I did this for the rain.
So last week on Friday, did quite a bit of watering out at Lukeman in hopes of getting some cover crops in. So all morning I was dragging around hoses and moving sprinklers and stuff. And then Friday afternoon, we got some pop-ups. It's actually homecoming for Jacksonville. They had to cancel the parade because there's thunder in the area and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was they're celebrating Jacksonville's 200th anniversary. So they had the Budweiser Clydesdales in town. But we went to go see them. We didn't get them out of the trailer because it was raining and stuff. After we left, the rain finally cleared up and they got them out. But yeah, it was a bit of a bummer. But Saturday was a big celebration. And that was nice weather for that.
Well, that's good. Yes. I guess, well, just a reminder, folks, I guess rain can be a little bit of a bummer, kind of ruin your event. But I'm celebrating it right now. So happy to have it.
Yeah, I would definitely take the rain over seeing the Clydesdales walking around personally.
Yes.
I may be in the minority there, but
hey, it helps the water bill. Yes. Well, Ken, now is the time of year where I think the saying that you have popularized, I've not heard anyone say this but you, if you're cold, they're cold. Things are starting to come inside right now. Crops are coming out of the field. Trees are starting to shed their leaves. It's finally we've gotten some rain and it's cooled off a little bit. And I'm seeing brown marmorated stink bug, seeing lady beetles. I'm seeing all kinds of little critters I want to get into my house. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to go through kind of the big three. There's three main ones that we typically get. There are some others, though, that we would see. But I would say my main one, which could we just sort of have a vote and call this the new bird of Illinois, the brown marmorated stink bug. My house is covered in them. They want to be with me. There's something about me that they really like. I'm assuming so. They're everywhere. They're all over my house. They're trying to get in. So brown marmorated stink bug. You said, Ken, you haven't seen many of them.
Yeah, at least not congregating on our house. Yeah, we see them occasionally in the vegetable garden and stuff. They get on tomatoes. So they're, brown marmorated stink bug is kind of one of those, double whammy. They're agronomic or plant pests. So, a lot of our tree fruit, they can cause issues on that. They have this piercing, sucking mouth part. They'll stick that into that, whatever they're feeding, suck the contents out. So you can get some, spotting, some dead spots on plants, on fruit, whether it's apples, peaches, tomatoes, things like that. So they could be issues there. And then I think what most people are probably more familiar with are kind of the nuisance where they're coming indoors, looking for somewhere to overwinter. And so these are brown marmorated stink bug. These are an invasive species. They're native to Asia. First found in the U.S. Late 90s, I think like 98 or something like that in Pennsylvania. And they've pretty much spread across majority of the United States. At this point, it's 45, 46 states, something like that. I think in 2020 was the last numbers I saw. So it could be more than that. More than that now, but so with a lot of these insects, as the days start getting shorter, the nights getting longer. I'm not sure which one's actually triggering it, but as we're getting more, as days are getting shorter, that kind of triggers a lot of these insects to start looking for somewhere to overwinter so they can go into diapause, basically kind of suspended animation, where everything kind of really slows down and they wait out the winter. So in kind of more northern climates in Illinois, it's usually day length because they're generally doing this during the winter. So brown marmorated stink bug, that's what they're doing this time of year. Days are getting shorter, temperatures are cooling off. That's driving them to find somewhere to overwinter. A lot of times it's our houses, so they're in out of the way areas where it's going to kind of keep them consistently cool. They're not going to be, they really want somewhere where they're going to have these wide temperature fluctuations. So maybe under leaf litter, tree bark, or our homes, trying to get them underneath the siding, wind up in your attic, things like that. There was one paper, see if I can find it here. Doing some reading before this. There was a guy in Maryland, was just collecting all the brown marmorated stink bugs from his house from, it was a 181-day period from like January 1st to June 30th, 2011. Collected 26,000 brown marmorated stink bugs from his house. And what they say, 13,000, about 50% of them were found in the attic, and 40%, about 10,500 or so, were in the first and second floors, kind of the quote-unquote living area.
I believe it.
There could be, when I saw that, I was shocked that there was that many. Because you've seen pictures of them, but it doesn't seem like there's 20,000 of them on there. But there can be a lot of them potentially. That's probably a little bit of an extreme case, but.
I remember the pictures from Pennsylvania, though. They had them like sweeping them out of their house. It seemed excessive, and I wondered, when they get here to Illinois, that sounds like it'd be really bad. And it's never, I don't think, ever gotten to necessarily that level here. But I bet you I got a couple thousand that have decided my attic, my garage, especially, every spring when we have to start baseball again, we have to pull all of the stink bugs out of the baseball mitts because they're just jam-packed in there. I think I might have scarred one of my children when they stuck their hand in there, and they just stink bugs all over the place. So yeah, there's a lot of them in Pennsylvania. They've made their way here. I definitely have noticed more damage on my tomatoes at this time of year. Now that they're around, they get these little soft spots on them, and you can see the little pinpricks where they've stabbed their piercing, sucking mouth part in them. And there's just these little soft spots. For the big tomatoes, I can just cut that out. Most of the fruit is fine, but I definitely, seen some of that damage. They really like to tuck themselves in somewhere. We were able to, like, I have the screen door. Maybe it was sort of slightly open or slightly shut, where they could get between the screen door and the glass of the glass door. And they just all sort of that's where they started going. I think because, they could get somewhere sort of tight, where they could sort of hunker down. And there's that. There's the patio umbrella when that's closed. Right now, this time of year, and I open it, it's just rains stink bugs. So I would say they definitely are able to get into my attic. We don't have the most secure of attic space, and then from there they come in down through the light fixtures into the living space of the house. So some of our older windows also, they're able to get through those. I can definitely tell which windows need to be replaced in my house because they typically have the most stink bugs around them. So yeah, I guess, Ken, some of the ways to differentiate, because stink bug, it's a broad term. We are specifically talking about brown marmorated stink bug. I think I've been looking at these guys so much, so frequently, I just know what they look like. They have the white banding on their antennae. They don't have the pointed shoulders like certain stink bugs do. They're more rounded. And that mottled camouflage appearance of their body, that just allows them to blend in pretty well out in the natural setting. And then, of course, they have the white, tan, brown, triangular pattern all along the back edge of their body. They can be mistaken, I think, for a lot of other stink bugs out there, though. Some do look pretty closely similar.
Yeah, we do have some native stink bugs. We've got a native, brown stink bug that looks fairly similar, but doesn't have the banding on the antenna and that pattern on the abdomen. That we have native green stink bugs that are green stuff, but those usually are not coming indoors. Those are typically more, in your leaf litter, under tree bark and stuff. It's the brown marmorated are the ones coming to our house. It's not that we really want the other stink bugs feeding on our crops, but those populations don't really seem to get as high as brown marmorated, because brown marmorated is introduced. It's been kind of released from its natural enemies, so to speak. There is at least one parasitoid wasp, the samurai wasp, that was actually imported into the U.S. They were testing to see if it was going to be kind of specific enough that it's not going to wipe out some of our native species. But they found it popping up in two different sites in the U.S., completely distinct groups. So they were not related. So somehow they made it here on their own. So now those are kind of spreading, and I think they're being released in the areas where they found them, maybe not necessarily areas where they haven't been found yet. But the kind of hope is that those will spread and help help suppress some of that brown marmorated stink bug population, because I think they're fairly effective. And if I remember right, they're egg parasitoids. The wasp is laying its egg in the brown marmorated stink bug eggs. And those wasps are then eating those.
Ken, for some reason, I sort of blanked out, and I just pictured a cartoon wasp with samurai clothes on. We're going to have to do a deep dive on this particular wasp, maybe on a future show. Samurai wasp, I love the sound of that. So future show possibility.
So that's about the extent of my knowledge right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's more than just brown marmorated stink bug, and we are going to get into more tips, tricks for keeping them out of our homes towards the end of the show. Don't forget, we always put in little tags in our show description that gives you a timestamp of when we talk about what. So just check our show notes if you don't want to hear the descriptions of these particular insects. Because next we have one that I think is near and dear to a lot of people, the ladybug. But it's not just the ladybug, is it, Ken? It is a particular type of ladybug, or lady beetle. I guess, what do you call it?
Both.
Yeah.
Should be lady beetle.
Mm-hmm.
So lady beetles is two words because they're true beetles. Mm-hmm. Ladybug is one word because they're not true bugs.
That's right.
There's your useless random piece of trivia for today.
Yes. I got one. Good. I love it.
If we're on Jeopardy, remember who told you.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is the multicolored Asian lady beetle. recently I've heard a lot of people referring to them as Japanese beetles,
Yes.
which always throws me for a loop because this time of year they're talking about Japanese beetles out and about, and like, no, they've been gone for a while. but it's so multicolored Asian lady beetle, Asian lady beetle, sometimes Japanese beetle. It's got a lot of different common names. That's one of the issues with common names, but Harmonia axarides.
There you go. I was doing a class just this morning, and someone asked, what do they do about Asian beetles? And I went into multicolored Asian beetle, and they said, no, Japanese beetle. Or like we've determined it was Japanese beetle on tree. So yes, common names can be tough.
So with this one, this is another, as the name implies, not native to North America. So again, native to Asia. This is actually one that was back in the day, back in the 19 teens, was actually attempted to be introduced. So first attempt was in 1916 in California in hopes of using as a biocontrol agent for aphids in pecan trees, because this is more of a lot of times it was more in trees in a lot of cases. And multiple different times throughout the decades into the 60s and 80s, releases trying to get them established, but they never did for whatever reason. But then for some reason in 1988 in Louisiana, there's a population that got established. There's some debate as to whether or not that was an intentional release or accidental introduction from a cargo ship or something like that. Regardless, 1988 was when they first got established in the U.S., and now they have, again, rapidly spread across the U.S., Canada. And I don't know if they're in all lower 48, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were. And with these, these are the ones. So they're bigger than our native, most of our native lady beetle species, about a 1/4 inch long. And again, common name multicolored. There's a lot of different variety. And then we can throw a picture up of what they look like. They can be kind of orangish yellow to orange to red to black. And they can have no spots. They can have up to 19 spots. The spots can be red. So if it's a black body, they can have red spots or orange spots. If it's the red or orange coloration, they're black spots. So there's a lot of variability within these insects, which a lot of insects we don't necessarily see. A lot of variability. It's kind of, this is what they look like. There's not a whole lot of variability. One way, a lot of time, for most of them, they kind of have an M-type pattern on the pronotum or part of the thorax. But there are some of the color morphs that don't have that. But if you've got a larger lady beetle that does not smell good, more than likely it's going to be a multicolored Asian lady beetle. And kind of the same idea with them, as temperatures start cooling, daylight days start getting shorter again, they're looking for somewhere to overwinter. So, they're, again, a lot of times in their native range, a lot of times they're more in like cliff faces, rock faces, stuff like that. In a majority of Illinois, we do not have that. So next best thing is your home. So they're kind of attracted to things that kind of stand out on the horizon. So a lot of times if you're kind of quote unquote out in the country and you're the lone building out there, the isolated object with high color contrast is going to be very attractive to them. Usually the south and west exposure, same thing with brown marmorated stink bug, is where they usually start congregating because it's warmer. And again, they're trying to find somewhere kind of protected to overwinter so they can enter diapause and kind of ride out the winter.
The other thing that I'm often asked about multicolored Asian lady beetle is, because they're an invasive lady beetle, we have our native species. Is there any conflict there, Ken?
Yeah, so they're feeding on the same things, aphids, mites, soft-bodied insects, things like that. And they can be quite voracious. What was it? They can eat 300-400 aphids during their development. So they're eating a lot of food. So there's that kind of potential that they're pushing out our native species. There's some research out there that kind of shows maybe our native populations were already in decline before they showed up but they are certainly not helping matters at all. So I would say that there's probably a good chance they're definitely competing with our native species for those food resources, and there's probably the potential that they can now compete and maybe push out some of our native lady beetle species.
And are these the ones that we would get if we would order them online? Multicolored Asian lady beetles. That's what the companies would send us.
I think a lot of times those are the convergent lady beetle that you're not necessarily these, but those are kind of collected from the wild and stuff and then shipped. Like we're not completely unrelated. Like when you get buying praying mantids, usually that's Chinese praying mantid is the eggs they're sending you of that, not the native species.
And the other thing that I'm well versed in, so growing up, we had a home that was very often, we had a lot of times paper wasps would find their way in our house, but then lady beetles, the multicolored Asian lady beetle, we have a lot of that. I do know that the wasps would sting and the lady beetles would bite. And it's not really, the lady beetle bite's nothing, I would say, hurts all too much, but it's like, I remember them being on like the back of my neck one time, like, what's that? And you like grab it and you pull off a lady beetle, like, well, that kind of hurt. But it never necessarily left a welt for me personally. But they do bite and they do have a pretty bad odor, I would say. So, yeah, that's just some other identifying characteristics for folks. They'll bite you and they stink.
Yeah, and I think with for some people they can cause allergies. I think brown marmorated stink bug is the same thing. So there are people that are sensitive to them as well.
Okay, but unlike brown marmorated stink bug, we at least do have the positive benefit of them. They're predators for a lot of our soft-bodied insects, namely like aphids, on several crops that we use.
Yeah, so you hear about them a lot in like soybeans, like soybean aphid and stuff. And they do go into trees a lot and stuff too. So if you live in a forested area, that's a good chance of why you would have so many of them there, because they like trees as well.
And I guess we have one more insect that we would like to present before we get to some of the things that we can do to keep them out of our house. The Boxelder Bug, which this is an insect I've known about for a long time. I've heard about it. I think I've seen it probably even as a young child, but I haven't really seen many of them lately until just the other day. I came across an actual box elder tree. The box elder is a species of maple, and the box elder bug was crawling all over this tree. There was just hundreds, maybe thousands of them crawling all over this tree onto a fence post, which then led into an old barn where I'm guessing they were going to be spending the winter. So it seems like there's a specific relationship between the Boxelder bug, which seems to be, I think it's like a soft-bodied beetle, and then, or is it a bug, a true bug?
It's a true bug.
It's a true bug. Okay. So it's long, slender, and it kind of has these orange and red, black to black markings. Sort of reminds me of a milkweed bug. They have very similar characteristics in terms of their shape and their coloration. But yeah, there's a relationship between those two, right? The box elder bugs only go after box elder trees. Is that correct?
More or less, yeah. So the box elder and some maples. I've read ash as well, which probably isn't a food source for a lot of them anymore.
Not many. Nope.
So yeah, but with box elder, they kind of have the 3 red lines on the thorax. That's how you differentiate them between like your milkweed bugs. Kissing bugs, they get sometimes confused with as well. But yeah, these are true bugs. So again, they have that piercing, sucking mouth part. And like I said, box elder, maples, and they're feeding on the seeds. That's kind of their primary food source. So I don't know about you, but the maple trees that I have in my backyard produce far more seeds than I want. And those seedlings pop up everywhere. So I would not be upset at all if I had a large population of Boxelder bugs on my maple trees.
I'll send them your way. I wonder if if the reason why we don't see them as much anymore, box elder, the tree, used to be more frequently planted, I think, in home landscapes than it is today. I almost don't see it at all in nurseries anymore, but I think there used to be far more common. I wonder if just because there's just fewer box elder trees out there, do we have fewer box elder bugs?
Is box elder one that has separate male and female?
I bet Google knows.
Yes, it's dioecious with male and female flowers on separate trees. So if you don't have a female box elder tree, you're not going to, like I say, you're not going to have, but you're probably not going to have box elder bugs because you don't have their food source, the seed. So that could be one reason why. You could have box elder, but if it's a male. And I think a lot of places, I mean, a lot of people, if you have the separate male and female trees, a lot of people are going for the males so you don't have seed production.
That's true.
Which is one reason why it's theorized people have more allergies nowadays because you have more male trees putting more pollen into the environment for the wind pollinated plants.
That's true. I think across all species, the landscape industry has been selecting male trees in that dioecious category. They've been going for the male ones over the female because fruit is messy, according to some people. I love fruit. Give me a female ginkgo any day. I'll take it.
It's nice perfume.
It is. Yeah.
So I don't think we mentioned, but box elder is a native. Box elder bugs are a native species, so this is not introduced. They've been here for as long as we've been here and longer. So they're supposed to be here. Again, same idea. They're congregating. They're looking for somewhere to overwinter. That may end up being on your house. They're looking for out of the way areas to ride out the winter. So if you've got box elder, maple trees, maybe ash, there's a chance you're going to have them. If you don't have those, more than likely you're not going to have box elder bugs in your landscape.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Ken, I think it's time we talk about keeping them out. By them, I mean the bugs, unless you want them in your house, which is fine. Insects don't necessarily bother me because we're also getting other things, spiders, centipedes, crickets. So there are other insects coming into our house, and I welcome them with open arms. The rest of my family, not so much. So I guess, Ken, for the sake of peace in my own home, what should I do to keep these insects out? Namely for me, the brown marmorated stink bug, because there's probably different strategies here.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that for these things, when they're overwintering, they're not going to reproduce. So if you got 20,000 moving in, you're going to have 20,000 moving out. Probably less because some are going to die, but you're not going to end up with 100,000 because they're not going to reproduce. They're not really feeding. They're just they're more or less hibernating, diapause and hibernating. A little bit different, but they're just sitting there riding out the winter. When they get indoors into our living areas, because they don't have anywhere to eat, their metabolism's speeding up. A lot of times they'll die because they burn through their fat reserves. So really, they really want to stay, in that attic, behind the siding, areas where they're not going to warm up and kind of break that dormancy and stuff. So that being said, good.
So I was just saying, and the other ones that are active, like some of the spiders, they like going in the basement where there's higher humidity typically. So if you have active moving insects in your house, like downstairs, dehumidifying that space probably would help drying out those insects, or at least making it less habitable for them. But not necessarily for the brown marmorated stink bugs that are just looking for a place to chill for a little bit.
To sleep.
Yes.
So with these, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So again, the biggest thing is going to be excluding them from your home in the first place. So depending on where you're at, it may be too late, or go out as soon as you listen to this and do it to prevent more from getting in. So making sure your windows and doors fit tightly. You don't have cracks around them. Window screens don't have any holes in there, so they can't make their way in through that. Cracks, crevices, foundation, pipes, wires going into the house, chimney, your siding, eaves, soffits are in good condition. They don't have holes in them. They're like door sweeps, making sure those are intact. You don't have gap. A lot of times you see gaps on the edges of the doors. They can get in through that. So you're kind of sealing up the house the best you can, which again is a lot of times is easier said than done. If you live in an area where you just have a really high, pest pressure, you're probably never going to seal up your house well enough to keep them all out. But you can do a good job of keeping probably more out than you already are. Go up into the attic and make sure there's no, holes and stuff in the soffit they can get up into your attic and things like that.
Yeah. I will say we did get new windows, at least on the front of the house, and a new front door a few years ago. And that has made a ton of difference. Those openings in our homes are just a really good vector for them to get into our house. So we have done a lot of sealing of these different cracks, little crevices that they could be getting into. We've learned that if you're using like a expanding foam sealer around a door jamb or a window jamb, you want to make sure that it is made for that setting, because some of those expanding foams, they can maybe expand a little bit too good. So it usually has to be labeled for, use around doors or windows. Because sometimes if they expand too much, they could maybe bend that jamb a little bit, or make it so that door jamb can't expand and contract with the temperature variations and moisture variations that we get here in Illinois. So I would say that was the big thing that's really helped us out. There's one other thing that I have to do, and that is to replace all of the air seals around our old doors, because I can see light coming through on some parts. All I have to do is go to the hardware store and buy new weather stripping. That's all I got to do. And it's been a couple years. So it's on me, everyone. But that's another easy fix. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, I know how that goes. And doing that stuff, preventing those insects from getting is going to help with keeping air, either warm or cold air, depending on the time of year, inside your house as well. So you get some energy efficiency there as well. And if you're using caulk, get one that can kind of is flexible, can expand and contract as well. Isn't real brittle. Ain't going to break on you when things swell or shrink.
Another question I do get quite a bit, as these insects are just kind of crawling all over the outside of the house, is especially my wife, she'll say, can't we just spray our house to keep them away? So what about perimeter sprays? Because if we would call a pest control company, that's what they would do. They come out, they do a perimeter spray. Is that going to solve our problem, Ken?
Solve? Probably not. So you can put down the exterior sprays, but you got to get it on before they move inside. So you're doing that early. Those don't, last forever. And these things are mobile. So unless you're coating the entire side of your house, which I don't know if the label would allow you to do that. Usually these are just around, the base of buildings, not dousing your siding with it. So could you? Yeah, is it going to help? Maybe a little bit, but
help you feel better, maybe.
save yourself some money. Now, things like spiders and millipedes and stuff like that are crawling in to your house. Maybe not necessarily up the siding and stuff. Maybe help with that, but again, it is probably going to be of limited help with some of these real mobile insects that can fly and get in through your roof.
And even if they get. Maybe it would be a lethal dose, maybe a sublethal dose. A lot of times they're still going to maybe make their way into your house, and then they die in your wall cavity in your attic. And now you just have a bunch of dead bugs in your house. So, which can be food for other pests that might also want to live there.
Yeah, your domestic beetles moving in.
Yes. Yeah.
That can then move to your carpeting and all kinds of other things.
Yep. So I typically don't suggest perimeter sprays, but if that's what people want to do, sometimes it just helps them feel better about the situation.
Yes. Yeah, you can do it. Would I do it? No. And like when they get inside, you're not using. Once they get inside, don't use insecticides to manage them with. When they get inside, that could be sweeping them up if they're not moving a whole lot. You can use a vacuum cleaner. You probably want to be careful with that if it's one where it's sucking through the impeller. Blending them into a nice stink bug or lady beetle or Boxelder Bug smoothie there, and that's not going to smell very good. Even like a shop vac where you've got it's being bypassed, that impeller and stuff. As they're getting whipped around there, they're going to release that stink. And you probably don't want to smell it every time you vacuum. So a lot of times I tell people, if you can get a cheap handheld vacuum, that's just going to be your insect vacuum. Another option would be to put like a pantyhose over the hose of a vacuum cleaner, rubber band that on there so you're sucking them into that pantyhose and you can just tie that off and get rid of it. But don't get them in. Ideally, don't get them into the vacuum because they're going to get blended up. That stink's going to be in the bag and the filters. And every time you use that, you're going to be smelling that for a while.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to be smashing them because everything we've just said. Also, the lady beetle will stain. They leave behind a kind of like a coloration that will stain surfaces.
With the brown marmorated stink bugs, I do believe they are attracted to lights. So if you have issues with them, leave a light on in one room. You can draw them all in there and then collect them that way.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I actually, if we have pizza, sometimes I'll leave the empty pizza box slightly open or ajar. They're attracted to that situation. I once left it. We once had a pizza party outside. Left the pizza box outside. It was full of stink bugs. I just scraped them off into a bucket of soapy water. Done. Like it was a pretty easy control method. And I think there's some probably DIY traps that people have posted online. I'm sure success with those varies. Sort of depends. I think probably a lot on the particular insect that you're trying to attract in that trap, but also some of the conditions that you have. What's the temperature? How much sunlight? The color of the particular trap. So I think there's a lot more things. Maybe we might know. I don't know about them, or maybe you know about them, Ken. But there's probably more study that we need to do in terms of some of these trapping devices that I see and hear about online.
For a brown marmorated stink bug, there are traps. Those are usually more for like egg, for crop fields and stuff. But I have seen mention of some traps for them because the brown marmorated stink bugs will also do should have mentioned this in the beginning. They'll produce an aggregation pheromone. So they'll release this chemical, which will draw more brown marmorated stink bugs in. So I don't know if some of those traps utilize that. But there are some traps available for brown marmorated stink bug. How effective they are, I'm not sure. And how practical they would be for a homeowner is another question too.
Well, that was a lot of great information about insects, namely the big three that are wanting to get into our house this time of year in the fall: the brown marmorated stink bug, the multicolored Asian lady beetle, and the Boxelder Bug. Well, the Good Roaring Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by me, Chris Enroth. A special thank you to Ken. Thanks for hanging out with me and learning me all of the good tips and tricks of these three insects. I don't really have to worry about Boxelder bugs. I do have multicolored Asian lady beetles, but as I've said, brown marmorated stink bug, boy, that's like enemy number one in my house right now.
Yeah, I'll have to start paying attention to the south side of my house, see what pops up here soon. And remember, for the other ones, your spiders, centipedes, millipedes, if you're cold, they're cold. Let them inside.
Yep. We need a t-shirt or a hat or something that says that.
And let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. Well, with the cold and maybe the rain, hopefully there'll be a little bit more hope in the near future. Tree leaves will start turning. I actually think I got the fall foliage map emailed to me the other day, and it has begun. whether it's fall color or just leaf scorch, tree leaves are falling right now. So what do we do with all those leaves? We're going to talk about that next week on the show. There's a lot of uses for them. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you watched us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing.